Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. Jenna here. Thank you so much for joining us. As many of you know, at Millimarker, we test for different environmental toxins that includes BPA, phthalates, paraben, oxybenzone. And these are the chemicals found in everyday products, personal care products, house cleaning products, you name it. And these chemicals, they're hormone disrupting chemicals, and they have been linked to a range of mental health as well as physical health issues. However, while they're in all these products, they contribute to part of the environmental problem and environmental exposures. There's another set of environmental issue that could be coming from exposing through mold. That's why we're really excited today to have Brendan Dean Vermeire joining us. He's the Holistic Savage from his Instagram account. He is a certified health coach with continued education in mycotoxins and hormones. He's also the CEO and Chief Scientific Officer of Metabolic Solutions, which is an institute for functional health and fitness practitioners. So Interesting. Oh, hey, Brandon.
Hey, Jenna, how are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us with your busy schedule. Well, I'm super excited to talk to you.
Oh, I'm very excited to talk to you as well. It's nice to take a break from, the emails and the office work and get to have a fun conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you. I just did a super brief round of intro. So now that you're joining us, tell us a bit about your educational background and what led you to become a health coach.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started my career when I was 18 years old as a personal trainer and nutrition coach. And over the years, so my background is fitness as medicine, movement as medicine, food as medicine, right? But I think you kind of start pulling that thread, and before you know it, you want to go deeper. You want to be able to figure out like, oh, you're already working out, you're eating right. Why are you not losing weight? Why are you still symptomatic? So before you know it, kind of broadens into more holistic health coaching. So then I went through a lot of different certification companies and programs. I became a board certified holistic health practitioner, but I really dove into the functional medicine space. And what was really remarkable, because now I'm pretty well established in the functional medicine space, and what's kind of weird about it is I've made my presence known, but functional medicine is still very allopathic. It's still like, well, here's the labs, here's the protocol, the drugs and supplements. And honestly, I think functional medicine is kind of missing out because they're not effectively utilizing nutrition coaching and fitness coaching and environmental sides of things. And especially with topics like mold that you mentioned in the intro, mold is not a situation that you fix with pharmaceuticals. It's an environmental, it's a behavioral, it's a lifestyle thing. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to bring a lot more holistic modalities to functional medicine for functional medicine to work as well as we want it to. So
yeah, totally agree. So through these like Instagram, we're trying to, shine a light on different approaches to wellness. So we have talked to dietitians, like a doctor of medicine, naturopath, and so on. So what is like a functional diagnostic nutrition? Because that's what you specialize on.
Yeah, I think the power of the functional medicine space comes from the diversity, right? We all have our different backgrounds and training, so we all kind of bring a different perspective. The conventional medical doctor, they have a valuable perspective, naturopathic. So the functional diagnostic nutrition program, I used to be the director of that organization. I was the head guy for like 3.5 years, next to the owner, of course. And what I really liked about that community and that methodology, it's basically like health coaching guided with functional lab testing. Mm-hmm. And I think that program, it's not as unique as it used to be, because it kind of used to be the only one that did that. But now there's other, like there's IHP and other, certification bodies that are kind of popping up. But it is this kind of like hybridized style of health coaching where it's like, well, we're still going to focus on the holistic health coaching component as the driving force, but we're going to use lab testing to guide that process instead of using the lab data from more of I'm going to diagnose you and throw pills at you. It's like, No, I'm going to use that data to help me make informed decisions on how do I coach you effectively through whatever is plaguing your health.
I love it. It's much more holistic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned about mold and the mycotoxin. So what are mycotoxins? How do exposure from like mycotoxin play into some of the service that a functional diagnostic nutritionist would provide?
Yeah. So, man, the mold thing is a huge subject. And the fact that it's become such a huge part of my career is a little bit mind blowing because I never would have guessed, back when I was 18, like, yeah, 10 years from now or 12 or however long it's been, you're going to specialize in mold illness. It's been trippy, but so obviously mold, it's a fungi that's been on this planet for millions of years longer than humans, right? Like we evolved with mold. We have mold that lives in us normally as part of our human microbiome or the fungal microbiome. So certainly some species of mold can produce these fungal toxins or mycotoxins that they're literally some of the most poisonous things known to man that we can find in the natural environment. They've been used for biological warfare. You can Google yellow rain and look into that. We use them pharmaceutically for statin medications are made out of mycotoxins and immunosuppressive drugs are made out of mycotoxins. And even in the literature, even in the science, they talk about how, mold and mycotoxins is a largely and shamefully ignored global health issue. It's approximated that 4.5 billion people on Earth are exposed to aflatoxin, which is just one specific type of mycotoxin. And there's over 1,000 mycotoxins known to man. So it's actually been approximated that up to 50% of illness is caused by poor indoor air quality. And you kind of think about, humans have evolved out in nature. We evolved out in the natural world in sunlight, fresh air, and now we largely live indoors. And so the air quality of the indoor environment should be considered a major contributing factor to chronic illness.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because when people hear mold, they get really worried. And then some of these toxins that you talked about, they cause cancer, they can even cause death, which is really scary. But you recently had a post saying that it is an essential part of also our gut ecosystem. So why is mold actually a good thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where I think all too often we like to sensationalize things that sound scary, right? I mean, that's kind of what's been going on the past couple of years with the infectious disease issue of like, well, we can use propaganda and sensationalism to make it sound even scarier than maybe it is and scare people into doing what we want them to do, such as buying a mold toxin test or buying our services, right? So there's a lot. I think using fear as a sales tactic, I think that's really toxic, right? And especially it's kind of ironic because we're talking about how to not be toxic. Mm-hmm. So that's where I try to bring a very balanced approach to the mold thing. I'm not here to sensationalize or fearmonger and say, well, everybody needs to worry about mold, and if you don't look out for it, it's going to kill you. No, I mean, this is why I always like to say we've evolved with mold for millions and millions of years. So our body has natural defense mechanisms like the immune system and the detoxification systems that are evolved and handled to deal with some mold. But it becomes a balance of, well, if you have above average exposure or you have below average resilience to the mold, there's a greater likelihood that it could potentially make you sick. Just like, well, everybody's going to get exposed to viruses. Not everybody's going to get a viral infection. Everybody's going to be exposed to mold. Everybody is exposed to mold every single day. But how much and how resilient are you to it? And if it's imbalanced, then it is going to probably make you symptomatic and sick to some degree.
So this is the situation when beneficial mold can actually become troublesome if they have a less of a balance.
Yeah. I look at it as kind of a breakdown of resilience. And, this is where, I love the work that you guys are doing, talking about all the xenobiotics and the parabens and phthalates, because we have to think about, our detoxification systems are now being exposed to a much higher toxic burden than ever before. And so that bucket is overflowing, right? Most people they're getting exposed to more toxins than they're actually equipped to be able to handle. And especially when you think about how many of them are inflamed and how many of them are nutrient deficient and all the things, they're not putting in enough of the things that our body needs to detox effectively, all the while getting exposed to chronically high levels of toxins. So they're overflowing, and it's really wreaking havoc on their health.
Yeah, we really don't want people's cup gets full. So pretty much it's like, hey, everybody, check your environment, making sure your body burden load is in check so you don't get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you mentioned a syndrome in your post called a leaky brain. What is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a lot of people are familiar with leaky gut syndrome, which has been very well studied and documented and validated. And of course, the gastrointestinal lining is not the only thing that can get leaky. The blood-brain barrier, which is a layer of endothelial cells, and it separates the bloodstream from the central nervous system parenchyma, or the CNS environment. And so we've always, or they, researchers, scientists, whoever they are, they've always thought that, the central nervous system is very exclusive. Yeah. Like what goes on in the brain stays in the brain. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But that's not the case, right? Like this is connected, and there's a lot of neuroendocrine immunological signaling going on there. And so there are a lot of things that can cause a breakdown of that blood-brain barrier, such as inflammation and toxicity, and a lot of different signals that maybe we're getting from the gut, such as if you have poor gut health, and then you have all these negative signals going through the vagus nerve or through the bloodstream, it causes a breakdown of the blood-brain barrier. Now we have leaky brain, which now toxins, pathogens, antigens, inflammatory molecules can all start dripping and leaking into the brain and drive massive brain inflammation, kind of brain on fire, if you will.
So what are some symptoms?
Pretty much the common cognitive symptoms most people are experiencing: brain fog, depression, anxiety, insomnia, or any sort of exacerbation of other kind of more genotypical conditions, whether what might have been high functioning autism becomes low functioning autism when there's a lot more leaky brain and inflammation, or if you have bipolar tendencies, that becomes more volatile. If you have depressive tendencies, so it really just kind of adds more gasoline to the fire and potentiates whatever you're just naturally kind of predisposed to. But I would say the depression, anxiety, brain fog, insomnia are kind of the most common symptoms that people might notice.
Right. So what are some?
I would also say chronic fatigue and pain as well.
Yeah, it's all this they seems to be all connected, all these symptoms too.
Yeah.
So what are some ways to limit leaky brain? What can people do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge list, because when you start looking into, the neuroinflammation and neuroplasticity are my key core areas of research and expertise. And the simple way to look at it is, neuroinflammation is your brain burning up and basically degenerating. That's why neurodegeneration and Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death for Americans. It's actually a higher cause of death than diabetes. So neurodegeneration is basically just chronic neuroinflammation, and mental illness does involve a large inflammatory component to it. So basically, we have to kind of be thinking about neuroinflammation as being antagonistic to neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. One is the brain, remodeling its neural networks and healing and regenerating and growing new neurons. The other is burning up. Is the forest growing and thriving, or is the forest on fire? And if we have balance and homeostasis, it kind of breaks even, and we're healthy, we're happy. But as soon as that balance gets, imbalanced, because we have too many pro-inflammatory, pro-oxidative, pro-toxic signals going into our brain from a toxic environment, a stressful lifestyle, the processed food, the sedentary lifestyle, not getting enough time in nature. So when you start kind of reverse engineering it, it kind of comes down to, everything about the toxic environment, the stressful lifestyle, the fake food, not being active, not getting time outside, social isolation, all of these are very negative input signals that further drive the neuroinflammatory cascade. So the beautiful thing is, even though we're talking about, these technical subjects, the leaky brain and neuroinflammation, it still brings us back to the basic fundamentals of a healthy lifestyle, a healthy environment, more than anything else.
So it sounds like pretty much the mold, if you're already having these kind of like a bad lifestyle, toxic environment, the mold will actually exacerbate the leaky brain.
Absolutely. And with that, I would say pretty much all of my clients for the past 5 years have been mold cases. And I kind of see there's kind of like two major buckets and two types of people with mold illness. So there's more like standard American metabolism. These are the people that they're sedentary, they're eating processed food, usually overweight, high body fat percentage, poor gut health, fatty liver, insulin resistant, right? Just the standard American metabolic illness, the metabolic milieu. Because keep in mind, 88% of Americans are metabolically ill and 70% are overweight or obese, 43% are diabetic. So that metabolic illness, which is the majority of the country, what do we know about COVID? Well, if you're metabolically ill, you have a higher risk. It's the same thing with mold. But then there's this other demographic, and I feel especially bad for these people because they're the ones that they're really health conscious, right? They work out, they eat really clean, they have good sleep hygiene, they manage their stress, they spend time in nature, they spend time with loved ones. But, maybe they found black mold growing, in their bedroom and they didn't even know it, or they got bit by a tick and picked up, a Borrelia infection. Yeah, they're kind of the canaries in the coal mine, right? They were doing everything right, but they ran into something that's just so damaging and detrimental that it still, made them really sick. So the approach to those two types of people is usually very different, because with the one, you have to really focus on rebuilding the metabolic health from the foundation up. The other people, it's they already have a good foundation, but they need a lot more specialized focus to try to improve the damage that's been done by, whatever it is that made them sick, like the mold. So
right. But everyone should be careful of their mold exposure. So what are some ways that we are exposed to mold that we're not aware of, we might not be aware of?
Yeah, I would say, being exposed to mold through the environment, I think it's something everybody needs some degree of awareness of, right? So, I'm kind of fortunate that I'm a independent entrepreneur. I work from home. So I have a lot of control over my environment. But if, you go to an office that smells musty every day, I think about especially people that work for the government. You think about all those government buildings that have a flat rooftop. So when it rains, the water just pools. You see water damage in the ceiling. There's some gunky stuff that falls on my desk. I hear those kind of stories all the time. So being aware that, any environment that smells musty, there's mold somewhere, right? And especially if you're noticing symptoms and you feel worse in a certain environment, or I used to be a CrossFit coach. You know how many CrossFit gyms are just old, moldy warehouses that, they turn into a CrossFit gym? So many of them. So I think just being aware of what a moldy environment looks like and smells like, and maybe is starting to cause you to feel differently. But usually there's the environmental side of it. Eating too much mold through food is not really a huge issue in the United States, but it's still relevant. It's a bigger issue in Asia and Africa and, places that they don't have as rigorous of agricultural monitoring and standards. But it is still worth knowing that there are some foods that are more contaminated than other foods, like grains, our cereal grains that, box of heart healthy honey nut Cheerios that gives you diabetes and fatty liver. Well, it also might be pretty contaminated with glyphosate and mycotoxins. So
yeah, so a follower asked on our IG story that, what can you do if you can't actually get out of moldy environment right away? So is there anything you can do?
Yeah, well, that's kind of part of where I try not to sensationalize it, because again, we're all going to get exposed to some degree. So this apartment, I moved into this unit back in October, and the reason why is because I found mold growing out from my vent in my old apartment, and the mold had been growing in the ventilation system, the airways, where it's blowing, spores and fungal fragments and mycotoxins all over my apartment, all over my belongings. So that was very alarming, and it was deep in the airways. And how long was it there? Months, years? I don't really know. But here's the thing is, like, I know that I was directly exposed to probably a decent amount of mold for a while. It was in my airways, but did I get sick? No, because I'm very healthy. I'm very metabolically resilient, right? Am I probably healthier in this environment than that one? Well, yeah, probably. But my point being, like, it was very alarming, and I took action and I did something about it, but I didn't freak out, and I did do testing on myself. Right. And my testing looked really great. Like, I didn't have symptoms. My testing looked great. So to me, I look at that as a good case study of, like, you can be exposed to mold and not get sick because you're resilient, right? So it's just some people are not as resilient, whether it's because they're metabolically ill or they're the canary in the coal mine and they're just not as genetically equipped to handle some of those mycotoxins. Everybody talks about MTHFR and HLA and all these, SNPs that can kind of make you more susceptible. But as far as, well, what if I'm living in mold and I can't get out? I mean, getting away, it's such a, like, you have to do everything you can where, if the mold is in this part of the house, you need to be in this part of the house, or get some air filters, or spend less time. It's literally every little bit counts. And even if you are living in a moldy environment, how can you better support your body to deal with that mold, right? But at some point, though, it's such a bio-individualized thing, but at the end of the day, like, you got to get away from it, you got to get it out, you got to clean it, and then you got to deal with whatever damage it's caused.
Right. Somebody asked it, did you throw away your stuff?
No. Yeah, no. That is a good question and a relevant concern, because some items, obviously if it's soft, if it's porous, it could, soak up or collect more contaminants. So I think that is something that people have to be aware of. A good example would be if you found, like, an entire wall of mold that was in your closet behind all of your clothes. That would be a really big red flag, because a lot of your clothes were just directly exposed to all of that, and clothes are so soft that it soaks up a lot of that. So that would be a good example of, like, you might really want to be careful about those clothes. But for, like, harder surfaces can usually be, like, wiped down and whatnot. But no, I didn't get rid of anything. And I think sometimes there's a fine line in between being, like, cognizant of something that could be a problem and kind of being hypervigilant. But I think that can go too far, where people are sort of, like, freaking out unnecessarily of, like, I have to get rid of everything I own and start over. It's like, no. Like, it's already an expensive and traumatic journey. Like, let's not overdo that. So
yeah, that's exactly the same thing we're telling people when they do our test is, don't freak out, one step at a time, because everything will contribute to it. So yes, you mentioned about testing. Do you have a favorite test for mold?
I do. I have very strong feelings and opinions on how to test and navigate mold. So obviously there's more the environmental side with, like, ERMI testing, and even just, like, ERMI is great, but then you have to know how to interpret it effectively. And the ERMI by itself, like, you still actually have to do a good inspection, right? Like, the ERMI doesn't do everything for them. As far as more, like, physiological testing, I have a lot of concerns with this, because most people, they just jump to mycotoxin testing, like a urinary mycotox. And don't get me wrong, I like that test, I use it, but it's literally my lowest priority of testing for mold, because, like, how many toxins you pee out, which we can only measure, like, 11 or 20 mycotoxins, and there's over 1,000 known to man. So even if you had a completely negative test result, that doesn't mean that you don't have mold illness. And even if you have really high levels of mycotoxins coming out in your urine, that still doesn't necessarily mean that it's causing an issue in your body, right? How many toxins you pee out in the urine tells us nothing about your health. It doesn't tell us anything about your symptoms. It tells us nothing about your physiology. So it's actually, like, the least valuable piece of information if we're trying to actually test for mold illness. So I actually designed my own test called the Mental Map, which is primarily a blood test. And the reason why is we have to be looking at a lot of markers in the blood to figure out, do you have inflammation? Do you have oxidative stress? Do you have signs of toxicity? Do you have signs of liver or kidney damage? Do you have signs of methylation issues or immune activation? Like, if we're not assessing the physiology, we have no idea if the mold is hurting you or not, and you can't base it purely off symptoms. So, the best clinicians and practitioners and coaches, we have to look at the data, correlate that with the symptoms. Does that make sense? And mycotoxin testing just is not really great for that. So it's my lowest priority. My second priority would be like an organic acid test, but even that has its nuances. It has its, limitations. So.
You kind of answered my question, because I want to talk about Metabolic Solutions, which is the service you provide, and then which also include this mental map test, right? So let's talk about Metabolic Solutions.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. So my business is multi-branched. The main branch is Metabolic Solutions Institute, where I train functional health providers, and we're actually launching our functional mental health practitioner certification program this year, which I'm super excited about. And mold is going to be a big part of that curriculum. But then, of course, I have my private practice and private clientele that I work with. But the mental map is a big area of passion, because I see all the functional testing, and I think there's a little bit of this like functional testing craze where people are, doing all the functional tests to look for all the root causes. But a lot of these tests are a little bit experimental. They have limitations. They fall short in some ways. Sometimes the accuracy or reproducibility is questionable. So I'm seeing a lot of people doing functional testing, but they're getting very confused about what the data does and does not mean. And the thing is, like, if the data is like misunderstood or misinterpreted, well, then it causes a lot of unnecessary fear, right? Like, if you pee in a cup and like, oh man, my ochre toxin is at 20 and my citrinin is at 40, like I have mold illness. And it's like, that's not what that means. That's a misunderstanding of that data, a misinterpretation. So the mental map is a panel that I developed that actually was based on the past 5 years of my work with mold brain, because I was trying to figure out, most of these mold clients, they don't have a lot of money to spend. We have to make the dollar go as far as possible. So I was trying to design a custom panel that gave me like as much reliable, objective data as possible, while being very cost effective. So it's just make the dollar go further. And so once I felt really good about that panel, I was like, I need to start training providers on how to use this. I need to get this test in the hands of consumers. So now we've branded it as the mental map, and we've kind of launched it to the world. But yeah, it's a really great test to assess for, all these things, neuroinflammation and immune activation. And so I think it's a really good assessment and starting point of what's going on with your body. And then we can start figuring out, well, what's driving that? Is mold a contributor? Is, heavy metals or whatever else? But first, we actually have to assess what's going on with your body.
Right. That makes total sense, because a lot of the functional tests are looking more at like exposures. Even our test is more mainly looking at the source of the exposure, but having a really good understanding of what's going on in your body, underlying issues, that's also really, really important.
Yeah, it's always step one. And I think a lot of kind of people in the functional world, they overlook that. And this is where, it's like you can buy a 23andMe from Walmart, right? Or you can buy all these direct-to-consumer functional tests. But yeah, a lot of kind of like exposure or, having something coming out of your body in the stool or the hair or the urine does not necessarily mean it's really hurting your body. It has to be contextualized, right? So yeah, it's just there's a lot of correlation that has to be done there. And it's a lot of, critical thinking as well.
Right. So you also started a nonprofit called the Metabolic Solution Research and Education Foundation. So tell us a little more about that.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's pretty new. We're kind of just getting that up and running right now. It's a long process working with the IRS, but so it's a 501c3 not-for-profit. And my goal and intention with it is to Longer term, I plan on doing like motivational speaking to raise money to then fund my research. And what I really want to do is be able to help people in need that like they can't afford testing, they can't afford supplements, they can't afford treatment, and be able to then enroll them into a clinical research program where they get free testing, they get free supplements, and we get their data, right? Because we're trying to do research, we're trying to look at the clinical data to be able to better navigate mental health disorders or whatever it is. So I'm really looking forward to it. I have all the pieces in place, but funding is a big part of that. But I look forward to being able to really like help people kind of for free in exchange for data, and then be able to publish my findings and show the world of like, here's what works and here's what clinical data points we can see to improve like the diagnostic process that doctors use. So that'll be a long-term project, but I'm really excited to be getting that going.
Love it. We should have a chat about the Small Business Innovation Grant from NIH, because I think this would be like a perfect fit that, getting the data so we can actually study it, especially we're talking about, multiple exposures, without the big data, you just can't really study it.
Yeah, right now I'm collaborating with Brian Carr with We Inspect. He's at Mold Finders on Instagram, and he and I have a good working relationship. So right now we're doing a little collaborative case study where they're going through their customer database to find somebody that's currently living in a moldy environment and is really symptomatic and ill. And I'm actually going to pay out of my own pocket to provide them with testing, so I can use that as a case study and show like, hey, here's what mold illness really looks like on paper with well-established clinical data, because I think that will be really valuable to be able to teach other providers and practitioners of what to look for and how to navigate that and coach clients with that or treat patients with that.
Amazing. That is so cool. So we have one last question. How do you recommend cleaning mold?
So there's kind of a few components, because there's more like cleaning mold out of the environment, which I always say like leave that to the professional remediators. And even with that, like that's a big subject in itself, because a lot of people will try to use like bleach or borax or whatever and try to clean it themselves. Unfortunately, that's a huge problem. Like even my apartment, like they cleaned my old apartment and all they did was bleach it and paint and that's not a fully effective remediation job. So I leave it to the experts like Brian Carr on the environmental side of it. And then there's more like, how do you clean mold out of your body, which becomes kind of a huge conversation around microbiome health and detoxification health. And I always tell people, gut health and detox, those are lifestyles, not protocols, right? Everybody just wants that protocol of what pills do I take and how long do I take it? And it's like, it doesn't work that way. It's, how do you incorporate detox into your lifestyle? How do you incorporate, gut health into your lifestyle? So that kind of gut liver axis is where most of the mold detoxification and cleanup really happens.
Yeah, that's echoing 100%. That's exactly what we want people to do, clean up your lifestyle, because by cleaning up your lifestyle, you actually detoxing already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. This is so informative. So everyone be sure to follow Brandon at the holistic _strategy. So, and then you can also tab on this this post to check out Brandon's Instagram page. So thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you so much for having me. This was a very fun conversation. I appreciate the opportunity.
Totally. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.